Imagine this, a young girl, rejected by her lover, ends up locked in a cage for 44 years. This isn't the plot of a horror movie, it's the true story of Rhoda Derry. From unrequited love to cruel confinement and unexpected salvation, this tale will turn your understanding of human resilience and societal cruelty upside down. Born in 1840 to a well-off farming family in Adams County, Illinois, Rhoda Derry's life seemed destined for happiness. But fate had other plans, and it all changed when she was just 16 years old. Rhoda fell head over heels for Charles Phoenix, a local farm boy. But love wasn't in the cards for these star-crossed teens. Charles's folks weren't too keen on the match. Small-town gossip had it that Rhoda's grandma was a bona fide witch. When Charles's parents caught wind of their secret rendezvous, they put the kibosh on the whole thing. Poor Charles tried to follow his heart for a while, but eventually caved to family pressure and ghosted Rhoda. This rejection hit Rhoda like a ton of bricks. She holed up in her room for weeks on end, barely eating or speaking. All she did was lie in bed and cry her eyes out. After about a year, it seemed like she might be on the mend. But then, out of the blue, Rhoda started telling her folks she was hearing voices and seeing people who weren't there. Her family of 10 tried their best to comfort her, but it was no use. As time went on, Rhoda's condition just kept getting worse. In 1859, when Rhoda was 19, her parents finally bit the bullet and took her to the Jacksonville Insane Asylum. But the docs there weren't much help. They slapped her with an incurable label and sent her packing. It's worth noting that back in the mid-1800s, psychiatry was still in its infancy. Most mental illnesses were considered lost causes, and the treatments were often cruel and ineffective. Getting stamped as incurable was basically a life sentence. As if things weren't bad enough, Rhoda's parents started having health problems of their own, not to mention money troubles. They just couldn't take care of her anymore. So, at 25, Rhoda ended up in the Adams County almshouse. Her family washed their hands of her. They never even came to visit. The almshouse was a last resort kind of place, running on taxpayer dimes and donations. It was where the down and out wound up, and a lot of them had mental health issues. The Adams County poorhouse wasn't equipped to care for the mentally ill. After arriving there, Rhoda became so aggressive that the staff had to restrain her. She screamed that she could hear and see the devil, and that the sight was so horrifying that she wanted to tear out her eyes to never see it again. And she did just that. After waiting for her fingernails to grow long enough over several months, Rhoda Derry literally clawed out her own eyes. Forever plunged into darkness, Rhoda beat her face and teeth with her fists until she knocked out all her front teeth. The poorhouse staff, convinced that the young woman posed a danger not only to herself but to others, decided to immobilize her by locking her in a wooden box. It was something like a caged bed on legs, covered with canvas. Unable to find one of suitable size, Rhoda lay on her back with her knees pulled up to her chin, unable to stretch out or even turn to her side. They never let her out of the box. She lay on a straw mattress with a hole for excrement. Under the box, straw was spread on the floor, which attracted all sorts of insects and rats that lived in whole families in Rhoda's room. For 32 years, this box would serve as Rhoda Derry's home. By this time, she had completely lost her ability to speak and could only cry constantly. In 1892, Rhoda's life changed slightly. An article in the Quincy Daily Journal from February 12, 1892, exposed the abuse, cruelty, and horrible conditions in poorhouses. The article stated, "It is impossible to imagine more inhumane treatment than that endured by a woman at the Adams County poorhouse. For many years, she has lived in a box stuffed with straw. Her limbs, bent at the knees, almost touch her chin. They remained in this position day after day, week after week, until her muscles atrophied. She cannot move her legs or hips. Mice and rats approach her box and build nests near this poor creature." Thanks to this article, Rhoda Derry was moved to a larger box. The Utica crib, a device used by psychiatric hospitals of that era, was something like a baby crib with a lid. These wooden cages were used to contain patients who showed aggression or suffered from sleepwalking. This cage was longer than the previous one, but Rhoda could no longer appreciate the difference. Her legs, pressed against her chest for many years, would never straighten again. She would live another 12 years in the Adams County poorhouse, lying on her back, now in a larger cage, in complete darkness, listening to her own crying and the footsteps of the female workers who came once a day to perform their dreaded duties, emptying the waste pan from under Rhoda's box and forcing a few spoonfuls of vegetable broth into her mouth. In 1902, the Bartonville Asylum for the Insane opened west of Peoria, later becoming the Peoria State Hospital. In 1904, Dr. George Zeller was appointed director of this institution. He was an advocate for mentally ill patients and one of the pioneers of psychiatry. Upon taking office, Dr. Zeller's first action was to remove all window bars. He was convinced that restricting freedom was not an effective treatment method. He allowed his patients to take walks and banned any restraining devices that resembled torture instruments. Dr. Zeller learned about Rhoda Derry from the annual report of Illinois State Poorhouses. He wrote a letter to the Adams County Poorhouse. "Send this woman to me, God bless her." And so, 44 years later, Rhoda Derry left her wooden cage and was transferred to the Bartonville Asylum. They brought her in a laundry basket, which she easily fit into. Dr. Zeller met her on the porch and lifted her out of the basket. Dr. Zeller invited state legislators to visit the hospital and see Rhoda Derry for themselves. He urged them to provide better care for people with mental disorders. "These people live among us," he said. "Look at this unfortunate woman. It's unlikely that anyone else in the United States, or even in the world, has endured such inhumane treatment for so many years. State hospitals for the mentally ill are necessary so these people can receive the help they need." Without realizing it, Rhoda Derry played a central role in changing the lives of people with mental illness in Illinois and much of the United States in the early 20th century. October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and it's also Rhoda Derry's birthday. At Bartonville, unable to walk, Rhoda learned to move around using her hands, pushing herself along the floor with her fists. She accompanied Dr. Zeller during his rounds to see other patients, and when he went for walks in the surrounding fields, she would skillfully hop alongside him. She lived at Bartonville for 2 years until her death. Rhoda Derry died on October 9, 1906, one day before her 72nd birthday. She was laid to rest under a cement marker labeled simply 217. 80 years later, family put a marble tombstone atop her grave, with an epitaph that would have made Zeller proud. "They built this place of asylum so that no other human would suffer as you. You taught us to love and feel compassion toward the less fortunate. May you find peace and warmth in God's arms." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by subscribing and hitting the like button. And don't forget to hit the bell to catch the next video.